So today I'm going to go through all of the instructions on how to make the Dinner 8 bra version 1. This is actually a variation 1 but with the wider straps. The variation 1 actually has narrower straps. The wider straps are in the other versions. The main thing I like about this Dinner at 8 bra is it has this foam sling, which originally I put on there as an aesthetic thing, but I found that it was so comfortable. I love this bra because it creates the lift but also comfort. So the Dinner at 8 bra was designed by Annie and Morris, which is me, for after the movie Dinner at 8, because one of the original versions was in the colours of the materials was designed by the Dinner at 8 movie. Today I'm going to go through the cutting out for variation 1. So first of all, when you look at your instructions, you can find out exactly which pages to print for your particular size, and don't forget to print at 100% of scale. So for this variation, I've chosen these materials. So I'm going to use fold over elastic at the sides rather than underarm elastic. So I'm going to cut out the power bar. So with this power bar here, which is made of foam, there's a cutting line if you're using fold over elastic, and we're using this standard strap. So I'm just going to draw that with a highlighter pen. So you can see with the side frame, I've got to use that cutting line there. The bridge is unchanged. With the power bar, I'm going to use that cutting line, and also with the upper cup, I'm going to use that cutting line. So I've cut out all those pieces. We've got the frame pieces, which is the bridge and the side frame and the back band, and they all have this cutting line for the fold over, which also goes with the, the frame is here, and then the power bar goes there, and then the cup piece is there. So for the main lace cup, we're going to line up this bridge piece here with the lower point of lace, which is this line here, which is the lower point of lace. We're going to line up the bridge there where I've got those flowers. And then you'll notice that this then goes at an angle down that way, and that's fine. But we've matched the lower point of lace all across there. And then position that with some pattern weights. Now, just by the way, quite a few people often ask me what POB is. That's the point of bust, which is the bust point. So I'm cutting all of that out with the rotary cutter. Now, when you get up to here, you want to extend that line up, just up to the top like that. I can't think of another way to explain it. I've just moved that across so you can see it better. So what I was saying is that you're just going to extend that line up to the top of the lace there. So that's how the final piece looks. Next, we want to cut out a mirror image of that piece for the other side, which you can see I've done by laying that down. And again, laying that so that we know that we've got a mirror image of that piece. So that's the two upper cup pieces. I tend to cut out all of the lace first and then do some of the other things like the linings all together at once. So this is the lace for the frame for the bridge. So I'm going to have that at the center. And I'm going to try and match that on either side so that this here and this here are matching as best they can. You can see that that seam there and that seam there, we want those to be roughly the same at the sides, and I want to have this at the center, so that's where I'm going with that. the lace isn't symmetrical, unfortunately, so I think I'm going to have it like that. And then what I will also want to do is look and see how it looks from the other side, which means that I might want to just move that slightly that way. I'm so fussy. So I've changed completely on that. I think I'm going to have it so that that and that are matching at the seam there. I've got this bottom edge of the lace there and there showing, and then I've got this at the center. So I'm going to cut that out and see what that looks like. And I think that looks better because, yeah, I think that's okay. The side frame pieces, I've laid the bridge over the lace, and then I'm going to lay the seam allowance over for the side frame to cut one side frame like that. So I've removed the bridge piece and now I'm just cutting out the side frame for that side. And for the other side, I've laid the bridge down again and turned this side frame piece over and laid that over again. Remove the bridge, and then I'm going to cut out that side frame. So that's the frame pieces all cut out. So I'm going to just actually finish the frame pieces by cutting out the power net and the lining for the cups, and then I'll come back to the power bars. So next, cut a pair of the back band from power net with the degree of greater stretch on the degree of greater stretch. Next, we want a pair of lining for the lace cup, a pair of the side frame, and one of the bridge. So finally, for the power bar, we want to actually cut out of the foam, and you want to cut that on the diagonal grain. So you can see that I've lined up the foam on the cutting mat here, and then I've lined up the this straight grain with the diagonal grain on the cutting mat so that this foam is cut on the diagonal. The easiest way to do that with cut and sew foam is to mark around that and then cut out with your paper scissors so as not to blunt your rotary cutter. So I'm just going to mark around that with my air erasable pen. So I've drawn around that with the air erasable pen, and then I'm going to cut that out with paper scissors so as not to blunt my rotary cutter. For cutting out the fabric part of the power bars, what I've done is laid the paper pattern piece over the foam for the power bar, and such that this diagonal for the power bar is matching the diagonal here on the cutting mat, so that I've got that on the diagonal and the greatest stretch. Then I'm going to mark a position up from here. I want to go up 4 centimetres up there. So I've marked a line up there 4 centimetres up because that's for the strap attachment. So I found it's easier to actually create a wide margin rather than cut out a paper pattern piece for this, over having done this for quite a while, because the satin slips and slides, so we just create a wide margin. So what I've done is kept the foam power bar where it is, but moved the paper pattern piece in, just the width of that paper pattern piece there, which is about 1 inch. And then I've dropped a line all along there around there with the air erasable pen. So next I'm going to assemble the power bars. Now we're going to start to pin the foam to the front of the inner curve of the satin piece. We're going to start 4 centimetres down, which is the extra we added for the strap attachment. And the main thing we want to do here is pin around a curve, because these power bars are curved, and to prevent wrinkles, we want to pin this around a curve. I want to make sure there's enough room for this at the end, that there's enough overlap at the end for this to roll over the top. And now we're going to stitch that 1/4 inch in from the edge, all along the edge. And also it helps to extend the stitching here, just because it makes it easier to fold over the when we're doing the seam allowance. So now I'm also going to roll that out. Now usually what I do is just iron from that side, but I don't, and then I roll on the inside. I don't actually iron that edge. So I'm just going to iron that from the inside and come back to you. So once that's done, I usually start around the middle somewhere and roll the edge out, roll that out and pin. And now what you want to be doing is continually having this going around a curve, okay, so that this power bar is continually around a curve, it's not straight. And we're going to do that for the whole of the power bar, that it's around a curve and evened out like that. So once that's all pinned, and we've also pinned back that top bit where the seam is there, and that's all pinned around a curve, and now we're just going to baste hand baste all of that along there and then trim off the edge, and that's our lovely satin covered foam power bar. Oh, and just finally, when you have put together basted that together and you're going to trim, you just extend the cutting line here for the top of the power bar there. So that's one completed power bar, which is going to sit beautifully to display under that lace cut piece and look really pretty, but also create a lovely sling. So we'll move on to assembling the cups next. For constructing the cups, we're going to stitch the centre dart seam in the lace and then in the lining. Now I've actually already stitched the lining one first because I wanted to show you, mostly really important when you're stitching these darts, to actually have your seam, I usually start with a short stitch here, then graduate back to a 2.4 length. Then when I come around to the end here, the main thing you want to do is make sure you're following a curve around the edge. If you just run off like that there, you'll end up with a horn effect. So you want to actually recreate the curve going around there at the same time as you reduce the stitch length, and by the time I've got to where I've run off there, I'm down to about a stitch length of 0.8. What I've done after that is just knotted those ends off. Then I'm going to iron that flat. Now I usually iron over, would you believe, over my sleeve board, because or a tailor's ham. I actually don't have a boob ham. So I've just ironed that one around the curve, which you can see has created that curve. I actually don't trim these ends off yet. I wait till I've aligned the centre seam for both over each other, because it just makes it easier for handling. Next we want to align those two seams together all along the centre seam, and then we're going to stitch down that to where I've marked the end of the pin there, using a 2.5, 1.5 zigzag. That's 2.5 long, 1.5 wide. So once those are joined together with that zigzag, we're going to pull the end through here of that to knot that off. I've done that, and next we want to gently peel back this lining, and we can trim these ends that we had. Trim those off. But also now what we want to do is trim this along here. Now I'm not wanting to reduce any of the volume. I just want to even this a little bit, and we want to be very careful to use some scissors and not cut the lace behind it. So I'm just trimming that to keep it a little bit even all the way along here. And then again, repeating for the other side. Again, as I said, not reducing any of the volume, just trying to even it up a little bit so it looks neat from the other side. And so that's done. I think I hold my breath when I'm doing that because I'm always, oh, don't. Following that, we're going to pin the outside edges together all around the curve, and then we can either machine or hand baste those edges together. I think today I'm going to machine baste, and to do that I just use a zigzag 1 wide and 2 long. So that's done. So hopefully too you can see that that's created a smooth curve around the breast there, not a horn-like effect which you would have had if you hadn't done the dart that way. But the final part of that cup is attaching the narrow clear elastic all along the upper top edge, and we're going to use a 3-step zigzag, 4 wide and 1.3 long. One of the main things I find easiest here is to insert the needle down and then pull the 2 threads back from behind, and that tends to stop this narrow clear elastic getting pulled down the needle plate. Finally, we want to pin the power bar behind this cup, which is going to look so pretty in that green behind there. So we start at the corner here. Then the main thing we want to be doing is pinning around a curve. So you can see I'm actually pinning this around a curve. Both ways. And this way as well. And that way you tend to avoid any of that double boob effect, and it also creates a lovely contour for the breast. So now that I've pinned both, I've made sure that this is an equal distance from here to here at that end. And then I've made sure to match that these end equidistantly at the front, at the just where the bridge is going to sit. And so you can see how that looks from the inside and the outside. And I think that's going to be really, 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 really pretty. So I'll just baste those and then we'll move on to the frame.